There's been an interesting phenomenon this year that I've seen requesting mediations, and that is the unmarried couple who have a child. Interesting phenomenon. Not that I haven't had that over the past 12 years, but this year has been a lot of unmarried people with children. So, why is this so phenomenal? Well, it's happening more and more, and it's happening in a certain age group. It's happening in the millennial age group. Now, I have been reading and talking to millennials who don't want to get married until they're financially secure. And that's generally mid to late 30s, which is wonderful and admirable. They're conscious about money, they're conscious about their career, and they don't want to bring a child in the world or get married until they are solid and set up in their own independent lives. And then they can forge together and create a family, a married life. But then there are other people that simply don't believe in marriage regardless. What is fascinating about this phenomenon is that even with birth control, you cannot prevent pregnancy. It sneaks in. Birth control is not 100% secure. So now they're faced with a dilemma. What do they do? Do they have the child? Do they not have the child? Well, we're in California, so you can choose not to have the child if you want to. I also realize, regardless of what state you're in, you still have to go with your religious upbringing, your cultural upbringing, what you consider to be moral. So this is a very big decision to have a child or to not have a child once you're pregnant. But I remember some years ago, maybe 8 years ago, I was dealing with a married couple who not only had a child in the early stages of their relationship, but then decided to get married to make the relationship a formal, legal family relationship because they had a child. Quite admirable, right? Well, they were fighting like cats and dogs, maybe not eating them, but fighting, little joke, but fighting like cats and dogs. So I remember saying to them in a mediation, I think you're looking at this the wrong way. I think you should be commending yourselves for trying to do what you thought was the right thing. I mean, truly, you wanted to create a family for your child. It is obvious that you both love your daughter. So, why don't we look at this differently? Instead of fighting each other, instead of criticizing each other, why don't you compliment each other and give yourself props for doing something that's hard in any case to get married and raise a family, but now you're trying to get divorced from a marriage that more than likely was premature or only based on quote unquote doing the right thing. I think you need to give yourself props. And they looked at me and they said, you could see they were self reflecting. And they said, okay, I don't think anybody ever talked to them in a positive way like that. And I never thought to say that to anybody before. I mean, it took time and years of doing this for me to even get that type of perspective that let's look at the positive here. Okay, there's child support and spousal support because you're married. If you're not married, and that's where I'm going to in a second, if you're not married, there is no spousal support. There is no division of assets. There's only child support and custody, the co parenting schedule. I don't know how successful I was with this other couple. They were just too into fighting. And if people are into fighting, you can plant the seeds and maybe those seeds won't generate into fuller thoughts and understanding until later, but at least I planted the seeds. So now let's go to this year and the number of people unmarried coming here to deal with custody and child support. and not happy with each other. Well, they fall into two camps. The one camp is, well, we've known each other for a couple years. We just had not planned on getting married quite yet or having children, and here we are. So I'm looking at this one situation. I mean, this one category. We've known each other for a couple years. Okay. Well, in the old days, like any year prior to 2024, in the old days, that would have been good enough. 2 years dating, yeah, that's enough to get to know each other. You're seriously never going to totally know each other until each step along the way of your lives together, you have challenges that force you to think in different ways than you have been needing to think. And your spouse gets to see how you make decisions, but that's just part of having a long relationship. We never really, really ever know somebody inside and out. And why is that? We don't know ourselves inside and out. We don't know how we will make decisions in a critical situation unless we're faced with that critical situation. And anybody who is self aware understands that you have to look at your whole life when you have a critical situation, and how is this situation and the decisions you're going to make to address it, how is it going to take in the rest of your life? So it really just depends on where you're at any point in time with a situation that comes up that is forcing you to make decisions in ways you've never had to before. Okay, that's one couple. The other couple is, we just met 5 minutes ago. I mean, 5 minutes ago equals under a year. We met under a year. We're still dating. We're getting to know each other. 6 months is like nothing. 6 months is like being on the first date. You don't know anybody in 6 months. You just don't. Maybe you know what they order at the diner or the restaurant because they're a creature of habit. You don't know this person, though. You don't know whether anything this person has told you about themselves is really true. We do tend to build ourselves up in the first year of knowing somebody, certainly in the first few months. We want to present the best versions of ourselves. And so we may stretch a little bit, or we may just leave out those parts of, okay, this is where I really fail. You may just leave out those parts of describing yourself, and the other person will see as time goes on. Those are the more critical situations. So you have the couple that's known each other for a couple years and just got pregnant, didn't plan to, now what? And then you have the couple that really doesn't know one another at all. Under a year, maybe not even half a year, they have a child and didn't believe in abortion, thought it would work, and had the child. Now, what do? You do the same thing that I told the other couple to do. And that is, you give yourself props, first of all, for having the child. I mean, you can't be faulted for not having an abortion. You can't be faulted for deciding to continue on life. So I think you should acknowledge that you're doing something positive by having the child and wanting to give the child a good life. Number two, once you acknowledge that you're both at least on the same page about co-parenting a child, now you have to actually form that relationship. So you either go from knowing each other for a couple years to forming a co-parenting relationship, or hardly knowing each other at all and forming a co-parenting relationship. Tougher. The latter is the tougher, of course. But help is on its way. At least if you can stop blaming each other, if you could stop trying to find fault with one another, if you could stop being fearful, that's really it. Stop being fearful. Don't be fearful of the court system. Don't be fearful of being a parent because all parents are fearful. That's the secret. Nobody knows how to be a parent until they make mistakes being a parent. Oh, then they know and they self-correct. Don't blame each other. Don't get mad at each other. Everybody's trying to figure it out, really and truly. So here's the one thing I can pass along to anybody that is going to be the first wonderful step you can take. And that is just admit that you're fearful. Admit that you're fearful. This is new to me, just like it is to you. I think we both want our child to have the best life possible. Let's just sit down and talk about how that works out. Please stop worrying about child support. Everybody worries about child support. I want 50-50 custody because then I have to pay less child support, or he or she should be working and they're not. I'm making a lot of money. I don't want to be the one that pays child support. Stop it now. That is the most ridiculous conversation you can have. Because if the truth be told, you both have to equally support this child. Both of you. Make as much money as you can so you can give yourselves and the child the best life possible. Who cares if you just lost your job? Who cares? Get another job. Get 2 jobs. Do the best you can. And when you're looking at creating the child's schedule, you can't look at it from, well, 50-50 means I'll pay less child support. Well, that's not honoring your child. That really isn't. This is just all about money. So you put this dollar sign on your child's head, and that's what you're working to mitigate, deal with, run away from. It's a fool's errand to do that because every state in their court system, if one parent chooses to file in court to establish parental relationship, which everybody should do, by the way, because now it draws both of you into a very formal process that is supported by law. And I think you might need it, especially if you're fighting. Anyway, even if one parent goes to court, the court's going to establish child support. So stop running away from it. Talk about it. So let's just say you're a woman who makes a lot more money than the man or the other parent. But so far, I've only seen heterosexual couples in this unmarried role of being parents. If you are the woman in a heterosexual relationship, because this means something, heterosexual relationship. If you are a woman in the heterosexual relationship and the father either just lost his job, quit his job, something happened with the job, the industry changed, there's no future for your job, you got to find another path forward. You can change. I mean, maybe you have to pay some support now, but the other parent does have to start working and earning more money. That's not going to change. That has to happen. The courts, at least in California, will force that to happen. Or they will base child support on what you can make, not what you are making. See a lawyer. Talk about this. You need legal advice here. You need serious legal advice. But just say, look, this is the most money. If you're the woman and heterosexual relationship and you're making more money, just say, look, I make more money than you now. I've worked my tail off to get here. I do understand that in this state, I might owe you child support. Is there any way we can work around this and equally share the expenses for our child? Just ask the question. You're not divulging anything that the other person isn't thinking about. So just ask the question. Don't be afraid to communicate. So this is where I'm going with this. Don't be afraid to communicate. Through communication, everything can be solved. Through good communication, everything can be solved. Through not blaming, this is good communication, not blaming each other. It happened. She's here, he's here, the child. Now we just have to simply deal with it in the best way possible. So let's have some fun. Let's talk this through. Let's see what works for both of us. If we want to keep it out of court, great. You can register in court. That's not a bad thing to do, actually. It could serve your purposes better than not. But just say, let's just talk it through. Let me share my fears and concerns with you. And I want to hear your fears and concerns. Let's talk it through. Because if you haven't really known each other more than a few months, you're going to know each other for the rest of your lives. Done deal, fait accompli. You're both here. Let's make it the best relationship it can possibly be. If you have known each other for a couple of years, well, you know more about each other. You do have some history. But again, you both met in the middle. The one thing that was a common goal was that you had the child. So that starts at a really good point, doesn't it? You both decided you wanted the child. Now, so let's work together to be the best parents. And then there are these wonderful co-parenting programs that you can attend that really start you thinking in a different way about your role as a co-parent, because your role is changing. So you went from hanging out to seriously dating to having a child. You're a co-parent for life. Do it. Deal with it. Just deal with it. And these co-parenting classes are phenomenal. They will teach you how to communicate as well. But man, communication is where it's at. It's the words we choose and the tone of voice we use. That makes such a difference when we're trying to work out a difficult situation. And if I am to bring in one of my favorite heroes, Dr. Brene Brown, Brene, Brene Brown, she's done a bunch of TED Talks. She talks about vulnerability. And she says, once you can become vulnerable, you can connect with people. Once you become vulnerable, you can connect with people. Being vulnerable is difficult under any circumstances. It's really difficult when you're dealing with co-parenting. It's really difficult because everybody's in protection mode. We're fearful. We don't know what's going to happen. We have a long haul in front of us. Our child is very young, even up to maybe 5 or 6 years old, kind of young. And we have a lot of years ahead of us. And don't we both want to be involved in our beautiful child's life? I think we do. And our child is going to want that. Absolutely, our child is going to want both parents involved. So forgive each other. Forgive each other for having a child. If it wasn't planned and you're taking birth control, now, if you're not taking birth control, that's a whole different discussion that we're not going to have here. But next time around, get some birth control. But if you had the child, regardless of birth control, because you didn't believe in abortion, because you really did want to have a child and it didn't work out, give yourself props for trying. We don't generally do that. So give yourself props for trying, be vulnerable. Once you can say, I'm scared, I'm just scared. I don't know what to do. I want this to work out. I don't know you really well. I don't even know how your childhood was. Sometimes you don't know people well enough for them to Talk about what their experience was as a child. Even if they didn't come from a divorced household, you really don't know what the child lived through until, you're comfortable discussing things like this. Be vulnerable. Just say how you feel. Let me tell you, that goes boatloads to opening up the other person to doing the same thing. And if that other person reacts harshly when you become vulnerable, now you have to look further. Does this person have some kind of personality challenge, lacking in empathy, maybe some narcissism, maybe some bipolar, maybe some anything, ADHD, who knows? People are afflicted with everything now. But you need to know this stuff. So be vulnerable. Be the first to be vulnerable and work on your communication. Even if one person changes their communication to be civil, to be amicable, and stay there, stay in that pocket, I guarantee you, most of the time, the other parent will come around. Because who doesn't want to be civil unless there's something wrong with that person beyond anything you can do? And then you've got to get some experts involved, some therapists, some experts. But beyond that, no, watch a change take place in the other person. But vulnerability is where it's at, communication is where it's at, and forgiveness is where it's at. Vulnerability, communication, forgiveness, and dare I say, appreciation that you both tried to do the right thing. All right, so I hope this helped any of you in this situation, or if you know anybody in this situation, let them listen to this episode. I think it's going to really, really help them refocus where they're at so that everybody has a chance to enjoy this new life, this new family life that has just been created. I wish you the best. Write back your ideas, give me some comments, hit the like button. But as always, have an amicable day.